when you're talking woody versus green herbs, you are talking herbs like thyme is a woody herb. Thyme, as you can see there at the bottom of the pot, basically a woody herb is anything that has a woody stem to it. That's all it is. A woody herb is a herb that has a woody stem. So most of these tend to be the Mediterranean herbs, the herbs that originate around the Mediterranean Sea area. So this obviously includes these guys here, but it also includes different ones like bay leaves, because it's more of a tree actually. So, but bay leaves officially count in that sense. You've got the lavender, you've got the thyme, like I just already mentioned. You've got the hyssop, you've got the rue, lemon verbena officially I think falls in that. Marjoram, I've got marjoram, it definitely falls in that category. Rosemary and sage also both fall in that category. I've got all these guys growing in my garden. The rosemary, I've got the thyme, I've got the sage, I've got the marjoram. I even starting to try and do some lavender again this year. I had it before, and I'm trying to regrow it now because I tried planting some up front and it didn't work. But yeah, that's where we're at now. So yes, thyme, Mr. Lavender here. Lavender, I mean, when it's at this level, you can't you see just the regular part here. When it's growing out, that part obviously is green, so it's going to look like any other green herb. But it's at the base of it that we're talking about is where you're really going to find the woodiness when you get further down. Like even in this one, you can't tell where the actual woodiness starts. I'm gonna have to find some photos for you guys that really shows just how woody they can get. But with woody herbs, basically the trick when you're talking between woody and green herbs, the main reason you need to know it is the soil type that you're using. Because, well, all herbs need an aerated soil that has a lot more drainage to it. Now, I mean, we're not just talking drainage holes at the bottom of your pots. We're talking a much lighter soil. So like a heavy soil that you might use for any of your fruits and vegetables or flowers or different things like that, you can't really use for most herbs. You may grow in that. I mean, I put some mint in some heavy soil like that and it's fine. But mint is one of those monsters that loves just freaking propagating and growing everywhere, right? So you really have to look at, if you really want most of your herbs to grow properly, you have to get ones that, you know, have more of that aeration in the soil. So you're either using some kind of perlite or vermiculite in there to help them get some more drainage. Good to see a Bintney Saeed vlogs. Lots of big red hands from you. Hi. I'm doing mighty good. It's good to see you. How are you doing today? But let's get back on topic here. I am just rushing through this today. I don't know why. I feel like I'm just... But if you guys have any questions about these, let me know. I'm just going to go over what I have to say about them. And if you have anything you want to add, please let me know in the comments. But the other things you want with the woody herbs is they generally are more sandy or chalky. So the Mediterranean soil tends to have either actual chalk, much like here in Britain there's lots of chalk around, which is part of the reason a lot of these herbs grow well here. But they also love lots of heat. Okay, so generally any of these Mediterranean herbs will grow much better with more heat. Hey Dan, Dan can back me up with this, I'm sure, with the woody herbs. All of the Mediterranean herbs with the lavender and the thyme, the sage, are fine growing with more heat. I would say with a lot of them could actually handle getting into that 90 degrees range. Whereas when you try and say grow a cilantro at that level, it's just going to probably start bolting almost immediately and just want to go to seed. And that's generally what's going to happen with the greener herbs is they like a little bit more temperate climate. And that, or they're going to want some more partial shade. They're not going to handle the direct heat as well. So if you are in a higher temperature area, you need to actually have your greener herbs with the basils, with I'm totally buzzing on the names right now. But any of the ones I didn't mention as the woody herbs are basically green herbs, okay? Anything else, which means every most, which is the funny thing about the Lamiaceae family, a lot of the herbs in that family are actually green herbs, because you have cilantro there, you've got oregano is more of a green herb, though it tends to, when it gets a little bit older, it can actually seem a little bit woody. But it also doesn't matter if they are perennials or not, because oregano is supposed to be able to go over from year to year. Mint is supposed to be able to go over from year to year, and those are green herbs. Whereas most of the woody herbs actually are perennials. You can grow them for many seasons, and they will keep growing and keep growing, which is why you can see massive lavender bushes or massive rosemary bushes, especially around here in Britain. You go to walk down the street, you're probably going to see a big monster sage bush or a big monster lavender bush along the road. Lavender is definitely big here in the UK. So when you have a woody herb, very good, well aerated soil that includes sand or includes, as I mentioned before, chalk or a combination of the two. But if you're trying to create this soil yourself, you're going to take a lighter soil in the first place, and then you're going to add like maybe 25% perlite, 25% chalk or sand in there with it to compose your soil. So it's not nearly as much straight soil as you think. I mean, it is a combination of soil and these other products. Whereas when it comes to the green herbs, it still needs a lot of aeration. So you need still lots of perlite in there, but you don't necessarily need the sand in there. They probably could do okay with sand in them. I'm not saying they're not going to grow with that, but you probably still are going to want, more of that lighter herb soil that you can get as compared to that really heavy gardening soil. You can still put compost in there, because compost is definitely going to help the herbs grow, because it's just another type of fertilizer. So that isn't going to affect it. It's actually only just going to help it. Those are the major factors that we were talking about with the woody herbs, though. And I was really just wanting to bring it up because this is planting season. And when you start trying to plant these different types of herbs, if you try and just grow a woody herb in a standard herb soil, it could grow. I'm not saying it's not going to grow. I have a sage that I've grown that it ended up was started in a not a heavy soil, but just a regular herb soil, and it actually is growing, but it's not growing nearly as well if I had more sand in there. So if anything, if I was going to repot it, I probably would put a little extra sand in there. Hello, Food Forest Permaculture. Good to see you too. How you guys doing? Is everybody feeling good today? Feeling all right? I hope so. So that's the main thing I was wanting to cover with these guys today, was the fact that chamomiles, I'm going to bring in chamomile here as well, because chamomile is another one that is a perennial, and it can seem a little bit woody, but really it's a perennial. You can grow chamomile year after year, and I actually do have a chamomile in the yard that it's in its second year now. And it's growing just fine. It actually looks fantastic right now. But chamomile is actually, I don't think officially a woody herb, because you can, with the perennials, they can basically go and, I went black for a second there. Ooh, what happened? That was the end of the video. It didn't loop. But the ones, the perennials like the mint and the chamomile and the oregano that can go from year to year, you can basically cut them back pretty far and they can actually look like they're dead, just like many perennial flowers do. But then they will just come back. My platycoda on my balloon flower, I cut it all the way back. It looks all winter and part of the spring like there's nothing there. People look at it and go, "What's in there? What are you doing with that thing?" And it's not until it's actually its time, come here another month, that it'll suddenly pop up. And yeah, all of my other ones, the oregano that I've held over from last season, is growing again. If you are doing a perennial, generally it is probably good to do a repot to put in a little bit more soil. Once you get them big enough, you could get even the woody ones. Once they get to a certain size, they're just going to get bound in the pot, and you probably either want to be able to put them in the ground, and they could from there handle being in a bigger soil, a thicker soil. As long as the primary soil was started off being in its natural habitat. But that's not until it's hardy enough and it's big enough that you can replant it like that, I think. I wouldn't take an initial first year one and do that with it. I would probably take one that's been around at least a year or two before I tried planting it in the heavier soil. That's my take on it. You guys can let me know in the comments if you agree with that part, though. Because I know there's some varying opinions as far as that aspect of it's concerned. Excuse me. I'm losing my shelf right now because I've been talking so hard and fast here. I'm just overexcited about this topic today. But yeah, since it's growing season, I'm really enjoying getting all the new herbs going. I did a ton of planting of new herbs because I had to buy a whole bunch of new seeds this year after the rats totally destroyed all my old ones. And I've got a bunch that I've planted, and it's now May 5th. I believe I'm trying to think of now when I actually planted them, and I think now it's been about 3-4 weeks, and some of them aren't showing yet. And with herbs, I know a lot of people think that, okay, I should start seeing effect almost immediately. And under the right circumstances, you can actually start seeing growth in a week or so. But with some of them, it can actually take a little bit of time, especially if you're starting them growing outside and not under ideal perfect conditions like under a grow light or, a perfect habitat or a greenhouse or whatnot. If they're outside, they're subject to the variabilities of the elements. And if that's changing in and out of their ideal circumstances, then obviously it's going to extend that growing time. So don't panic if in the first month you don't see any growth happening yet, because it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to get some. What I would say is in the very early times, start easy with your watering. When I first plant my herbs, I'll do a very heavy soaking on the soil. Then I'll put the seeds on. Then I'll put a little bit more on top. And then maybe I'll water a little bit more on the top. But generally, I'll just water it once. Then I'll leave it for, depending on how warm it is, especially if it's in the house and it's near the heaters, it'll be sooner than later. But if it's outside, I'll probably leave it for almost a week before I water it again. And then from there, it's like I try and wait at least 3-4 days between waterings. As compared to if it's already in growth, I can water them almost every day, especially the inside ones where it's warmer. And when it's warmer outside, I'll start watering all my herbs every day if it's not raining. But when they're first starting and there isn't much growth yet, don't give up on them right away. What you can do is, a lot of people like doing the little seedy ones just to, if you have a lot of those little tiny ones that you put in the seed pots, the little micro squares, you can basically probably get a little bit easier results to see if some are going to start growing earlier. But like I said, it's going to be more a matter of if you have it inside compared to outside, if you have it under grow lights and a contained room, all those things will come into play with it. So, we got some people in the comments here. Digging for Health. Hello, how you doing? Good to see you. We have, oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. Check out, I know some of you guys have channels. If you guys haven't seen Dan Permaculture Food Forest, he's awesome. Food Forest Permaculture does really cool stuff too. Digging for Health, good to see you as well. And hello, Renee Somerville. Yeah, and trying to think of where I left off now. But yeah, so far, I planted, I don't know how many herbs I planted. I have to go out there and count. It's a good 20 different pots I believe I planted. And the ones that are all growing so far are inside. None of the outside ones are showing yet. So, hello, number one, there you go. Oh, it didn't get your notification, but you're here. Good to see you, Desmond. So, the ones that are inside that are growing and that are already popping up is the dill. The dill for me, always loves to go boom really fast, really early. Dill just loves what I do here. The Thai basil is doing amazingly well. And I'll probably do just a specific video on how to grow Thai and Tulsi basil, because it's actually a very different format than I do any of the other basils or any of the other green herbs. Most green herbs you can do, like I said, just do that standard soil, but it requires a very specific format of doing a terrarium and having a much more specified ecosystem that you have to create for Thai and Tulsi basil to grow better, because they're used to growing in a much more humid climate. Okay? And believe me, this definitely works much better with the Thai and Tulsi basil. I tried growing them in the regular conditions. I've grown the regular green basils before, and did not work. I did it for like 2-3 years and was like going, what am I doing wrong? And finally did some research, and it's like, oh, actually, you need to do it like this. And it's like, yep, started doing that. Boom, worked great. The other one that's growing is the red Reuben basil. I got some purple basil too. Yeah, the red Reuben is looking fantastic. It's growing up huge already, whereas I have a whole bunch of others that aren't growing. The one that I'm a little afeared of right now is the oregano. Like I said, it's still early as far as the perennial is concerned. I'm thinking I probably need to up-pot it if I do keep it growing, because right now it's just not looking very nice. The parts that have grown out over winter are just kind of still looking kind of and saggy, and that's probably because, like I said, it has overwintered and it's just not looking very happy yet. But if I go outside and all the ones that are perennials that are out there, all the woody herbs I have are outside, and and pretty much like just a reminder, like I said, perennials pretty much across the board are all woody herbs are all perennials. Okay, so my hyssop I have out there had for 4 seasons now. I cut it all the way back. It's regrowing. I've got the 2 Thymes out there, both of which probably could definitely stand to be up-potted or cut back a lot more, because the growth hasn't been working very well on those. And that's another thing you need to remember with the woody herbs. They need pruning. You have to prune woody herbs. You gotta do it, because otherwise the leaves will start looking very sad. If you look at my thyme right now, it looks not too good. That's because I haven't pruned them recently. And even if you're not using it, you have to cut it back in order to encourage new growth, or it's just not going to happen. They're just not going to grow well. The owner of the place where I'm staying now, they left an old rosemary plant in a pot here, and it's, looked ugly. And I cut it back over the winter, and it's actually starting to grow somewhat nice, but I could probably stand to cut it back even more, because yeah, you just have to keep cutting those guys back. I mean, I can go into all the details of pruning, but I'm not going to do that right now. But, if you're doing the pruning cycle correctly, um, it counts double when it comes to woody herbs compared to green herbs. I mean, some green herbs you could, if you wanted to, especially things like cilantro, coriander, you can just, let them grow, harvest them, and call it good, and just replant the seeds and grow it again for a couple times over the summer months. Um, but that as well, though. I mean, even with the green herbs, you can do pruning on them to encourage growth, but it's not. I don't think to the same extent. I don't think it's quite as necessary as the woody herbs. Um, yes, because they're perennials, they will eventually just grow big on their own, but it's not going to be as nice if you don't keep cutting them back. It's just a fact. There you go. So, Thinking for Earl says, yeah, it's been nice gardening again. Oh, yeah. Already been pretty hot there in southeast Georgia. Yeah. Yeah, it is so nice. It's one of my, I mean, I think the planting and the initial scene of the herbs sprouting is like the most exciting time for me, because it's like once I planted them and I have the joy of seeing them come up, I mean, from there it's just maintaining and making sure they grow big, but it's like knowing that you've succeeded and actually getting them to grow at all, for me, is like that initial stage. That's the best. That's the best part. You can't go wrong with when they first start popping up and it's like, yay, there it is. Yeah, nothing better than having those herbs first starting to show up. So I'm very excited to see what happens outside and exactly how long it takes them to start growing, because I did a variety of planting out there in early April, and the weather has been cooler here, so which is another reason that it hasn't been growing exceptionally well, and it hasn't been very rainy either, which also makes it harder because of the fact that the rain definitely brings nutrients in. It's like you can, do what you can to add nutrients in there with, various fertilizers and compost and such. But, Mother Nature definitely helps a ton if she can just rain on those herbs outside. But I did a variety outside this year where I planted lavender for the first time since I've lived in this new place. I took my old lavender plant and tried to transplant it in the front garden before I realized that I had perennials already growing in that front garden that the owner had put in there. So the lavender was like, oh no, and just died. So yeah, my old lavender went away, and now I'm trying to regrow it here. And hopefully that'll come out and do really well, and I can get myself a nice big lavender plant. I also had to, the perennials I do have with the sage, which is regrowing and looking quite nice. It's been beset by a lot of bugs, so I've been really working hard. I put a whole layer of diatomaceous earth on the top of the soil to try and stop new bug growth, and been spraying them down with soapy water and just going into the herb itself and trying to just make sure all of the bugs are off of them as much as I can. And once you're doing that bug maintenance, you gotta do it very often. You can't just go in and go do it once and expect it to be done. You have to keep going back, if not every day, every other day, to see if they're coming back. Because much like snails and slugs, yeah, man, those guys will just always keep coming back, and you have to just because they'll come in from other yards and other places, and it's a constant battle that you just have to make part of your routine to fight them off. But getting back to the planting, I did it just in pots. I did a lot of herbs, but in a couple of my long planters, which have the heavier soil in them, I did a bunch of flowers. And I also took a risk with one of the heavier planters, which again, we'll see how it works. It was an experiment. I went against a little bit of what I've been talking here. I took some of that heavier soil, and on top of it, I put some of the lighter soil, and then I planted some herb seeds in there. So I'm just very interested to see how it will work in comparison, and maybe we'll do a little video, later on here once the growth starts happening to see how those are growing compared to the ones in the other soil. So I figured it'd be a nice one just to show, okay, here they are in the heavier soil and what happened. Here they are in the proper soil, that's what happened. So I did some planting with a little bit in each, just to give it a shot. But I also did backups. So I did just a herb variety garden where I did some chives, I did some basil, and I believe I did some, what was the other one? I think I did some dill in there as well. So I basically did a mismatch of various herbs in there. And I figured I'd see, okay, if any of them grow in the heavier soil. Just to try it, just to see what would happen, just to show you guys. But otherwise, I tried to make sure I did it correctly with the right ratios with the other ones. If the lavender doesn't grow, I did a little bit of the same problem. I just added a bunch of sand on the top, but I probably could have taken a bit more of that dirt out and added even more sand in there. So that soil that it's in right now might not be aerated enough. So if it doesn't grow here, what I will do is I'll just take some of that soil out and I'll actually add even more sand to encourage that. So, and I'm sure I can get it to grow here later in the season. But yeah, I'm very excited to see all the flowers grow and everything start popping up. It's definitely, an exciting time of year. I even tried planting the coriander early, which probably won't grow. Coriander really loves middling temperatures. If we're talking UK temperatures, we're talking 21 to 25 or so, I believe. But in America, Fahrenheit, we're talking probably, it likes being at least in the mid 60s to the mid 70s. It can go up to the 80s, but really the higher you start getting, the more it tends to start wanting to bolt faster. It can grow, but then you're not going to get as much longevity out of it. Okay? But that's the cilantro for you. Yeah, that's it. That's the woody herbs versus the green herbs. That's a big rundown of what I've done out there in the garden. So, yeah. You guys have any questions or comments you'd like to add on the woody versus green herb philosophy? Let me know in the comments before I go. Otherwise, just a quick rundown. I'm keeping this same format as much as I can for the next couple months. I'm going to be doing a new video next Thursday, and I'll be doing the following week after that. I will be doing a new live stream, and I believe the timing actually works out really good because I'm actually taking a quick trip out of the country here towards the end of the month. So, but that's on the week that I'm releasing a video, so it won't affect the live stream date. But then once we hit June, I may be having to change what's happening with the live streams. I may actually be just going to Sundays because I'm going to be rehearsing for a show, and that'll be going Monday to Friday. So I expect in June, live stream times will probably change. So get ready for that. Otherwise, it's salt. It is the year of the salt. I have a ton of salt videos for you, and I've broken it down tons. So I've got the history of salt, part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 coming out. I've decided to do it in a much smaller format according to region. So my first one's going to be the history of salt in China. Next one's going to be the history of salt in Africa. We're going to follow that up with the history of salt in Europe, the history of salt in Americas. And yeah, we're breaking it all down there. And we'll also be going into the benefits of salt. We're going to be going into what's the difference between rock salt versus sea salt. So tons of salt videos coming for the next 3, maybe 4 months. Because I've got at least 8 more of them, if not 10 more of them to come. So if you're really enjoying if you haven't seen my first salt video, please go watch that. How good is salt really for you? Because I know there's lots of variant information saying, no, you shouldn't have too much salt. But there's also lots of research that says salt, if you have not enough of it, it's actually worse for you than having too much of it. So go watch that video. It'll talk to you all the details. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate all the love. And yeah, I'll be back for another live stream in 2 weeks. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Do, 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 do.